Hi, I'm Catherine Rodriguez, and I'm here to show you how to throw a holiday Christmas decorating party without the mess. So now I'm here to show you my favorite all-time butter cookie recipe that I love to use every holiday for decorating. And I have 3 eggs here that I'm gonna add salt to so the salt will break down the proteins of the eggs, and I can whisk it together and it will be much more fluid when I add it to my soft butter and sugar. This is just the basic creaming method that we're going to be doing. And it's very important that your eggs are at room temperature and with a little bit of salt, and your butter is at a mayonnaise consistency, not melted and not too cold. It should be exactly the consistency of mayonnaise. Let me show you. It's like really just, I'm gonna work it just a little bit more, but you want it just the same soft butter. And by having your butter this way, when you're doing the creaming method, you're not having to overwork your cookie dough. And you end up with these nice tender cookies that are not tough. And they puff up beautifully and they're light. So I'm gonna add this butter to my KitchenAid mixer. And then I'm gonna add my sugar right away, and it's gonna mix together very quickly. So you can see I'm not even having to mix it that much at all because my butter was at the right consistency. You don't want to melt your butter. This is, I see a lot of times chefs taking blowtorches and trying to melt the sides, and that just changes the whole end result of your cookie. So that's mixed together. And now that we've had our eggs sitting out for 30 minutes or so with some salt, we're gonna add, and it's at room temperature, we're gonna add that to our butter. And you're gonna see that the butter is not going to break. It's going to add perfectly, and you're gonna have this smooth batter to work with. When you're adding cold eggs to your butter, you tend to have the butter, it starts to break. And this way, it just comes together just perfectly. And don't forget, scrape down the sides of the bowl at least 3 or 4 times when you're making cookies. Get all the way to the bottom, because this will make more uniform cookies at the end. A lot of times when you see those cookies that it spreads too much on one side, it's because it wasn't they didn't use the proper method by scraping down the bowls and making sure that the cookie dough was all uniform. Okay, now I have my all-purpose flour, and we're gonna add our baking powder, and we're gonna whisk that together. And then we're gonna sift it. And I always say, when in doubt, sift. You never know what could be in your flour. So we're just gonna sift our flour, and we're gonna add that to our sugar, egg, and butter mixture. And it's gonna come right together. Okay, so now we're going to add our sifted flour with our baking powder. We're gonna add it all at once. And make sure you turn the mixer down to low speed because we don't want flour all over the kitchen. So we're gonna put this on speed 1. And we just want the dough to just come together. And we'll probably scrape it a couple times. Like it's starting to come together. And so I'm just gonna take it off one more time. I can't emphasize how important it is to scrape the sides of the bowl, because you want all of your cookies to bake off evenly, and you want to be able to have 100% yield. And this, just the last couple turns, and our doughs has come right together. And we're gonna roll this out right away. We're not going to do what most people do by flattening out the dough and putting it in the refrigerator. We're gonna roll it between two pieces of parchment paper, and this is a really easy way to roll it out because it's already soft. And then we're going to put it in the freezer, I would say for 20-30 minutes, or the refrigerator for 2 hours. I have this great rolling pin that almost helps you if you don't have a sheeter, which I know most people at home don't have sheeters. It's something we have in commercial kitchens. And we're gonna do this at a 1/4 inch thickness. So I'm gonna take the 1/4 inch thickness rod and I'm going to screw it into the side. And I believe, oh, this is a Joseph rolling pin. And I find this to be really handy because it just gives you a guide, and so you're not ending up with uneven rolled out cookie dough where it's thin on one side and too thick on the other. This makes it a lot easier. So we're gonna just take our dough that we made, and we're gonna put it in between two pieces of parchment. And you're gonna see how easy this is. And you know what the great thing about this is that you're not adding extra flour to alter the recipe. So whenever you're adding more flour to the recipe, you're altering the recipe, and you're making the cookie tougher. So I like this technique because you're not having to put flour all over the place, and your kitchen's not ending up with a ton of flour everywhere. And all you're doing is, you don't even have to roll the rolling pin, you're just pressing it. And you can keep flipping it like so. And you can do this with plastic wrap or guitar sheets or acetate, whatever you prefer. And you're just gonna press it like so, and you end up with the same thickness. You're not even having to roll the rolling pin. So there, I know that is a 1/4 inch. And so I'll just keep doing this, and I'll keep stacking them up, and I'll put them on a sheet pan, and then I'll put them in the freezer for probably, I would say 30 minutes, and then we can bring them right out and we can start cutting our Christmas cookies. Okay, now we're gonna make royal icing. I have 2 pounds of powdered sugar here, and we're gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon of cream and tartar. And we're gonna add our pasteurized egg whites just so we don't have any problems with salmonella. And I'd much rather use pasteurized egg whites than egg white powder. I just think it tastes better. And we're just gonna mix this together till it comes together, and then we're gonna add our vanilla extract for a little flavor. And then we're gonna color it with our Christmas colors. We've chosen red, blue, and green today. Okay, I'm just gonna add some Madagascar extract. You can add Tahitian as well, just for a little flavor. So I like to use disposable piping bags. There's no need to be using those cloth piping bags. They just end up getting stinky and they're so hard to clean. So I love just using the disposable ones, especially when we're trying to make this as easy as possible for cleanup. I'm going to do 1 bag that's just going to be white icing. And since we're gonna have kids here, we kind of want to not put so much so the piping bag's a little bit easier to handle. So I'm just gonna put about this much, okay? Okay, and so we're just going to put a little bit of our royal icing in 3 different bowls, and we're gonna color them 3 different colors. And I like having it already in the piping bag because then, you know, it's just less mess and the children can just pick it up and they can work on their piping skills. And you'd be impressed with their piping skills at a very young age. My son's 4 and he is already piping. So I don't think, you know, get away from those wooden popsicle sticks that you use to spread on the icing. I say go right to the disposable piping bags. So we're going to do our first color, red, and just put some red food coloring in there. I like to use gel food coloring for when we're making icing. It just blends much better than powdered or liquid. And so here we go with the red. It's hard to come up with a really great red. You gotta add quite a bit of red to get it really a Christmassy red. now we've taken our dough out of the freezer and we have these ice packs that are keeping our dough cool. And we're going to temper our dough just a little bit so it comes a little bit softer, so it's easier for us to cut the cookies so the dough doesn't crack. Do you know why, Ellie, we want to keep our dough cold?
So the dough doesn't get too sticky.
Exactly. Very good. So, do you want to try a Christmas tree?
Yes.
I have my oven at 350 degrees and we're baking off some cookies right now, and we're just baking them till the corners and the outline of the cookie is a nice golden brown and the center is still somewhat white.
So how long should you let them cool before decorating them?
Oh, they should be cooled all the way off
Okay.
so that the icing's not melting.
Completely cool.
But I just put it
Go in the freezer for a
in the
while.
freezer for a little bit to speed up the process.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, sir.
And depending
So I
on
would
the
explain that.
depending on the age, I would depending on the age of the child, some children like to do the measuring, so those children would come earlier and do the measuring of and making the doughs and rolling them out, and then the younger children would just come at a later time to just decorate.